I think you can learn a lot from owning a franchise. And we've seen this happen a lot where people buy a franchise. Not only do they own a franchise, but they might own another business in a non-competing way.
In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a great episode today. We are talking about franchising, which is close to both Jessica and I's heart because we are a part of an amazing franchise. But we thought, that we wanted to spend some more time on franchising because we do think it's a great option for a first-time buyer.
Yeah, I think not even just a first-time buyer, but like any first-time business owner. Andy, both you and I we've been through startup businesses when we were very young. We now part of the franchise organization, have built fairly large organizations, but there's a lot to learn when you're starting your first business. And whether you're trying to start or buy, sometimes having processes and systems and a community really that you can lean on is a great option for someone who's starting off and just doesn't know what they don't know as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think you can learn a lot from owning a franchise. And we've seen this happen a lot where people buy a franchise. Not only do they own a franchise, but they might own another business in a non-competing way. My brother bought a franchise and he said it helped him with his other business because it taught him so much about business and about proper systems and things like that. But, not to say that that's the only reason you should buy a franchise as a first-time buyer. We just think that there's great opportunities out there for people. Franchising is becoming more and more popular. It is becoming a huge part of our economy here in the United States and abroad. I mean, you could see the franchises are just all over the world. You just got back from Spain.
Yeah.
I bet you saw a few franchises there.
Oh my God, there's franchises everywhere, but the Spanish especially love McDonald's. Like there was one on every single corner. Oh, there was McDonald's everywhere. But it's huge. Franchising is huge nationally. And I think we're becoming more aware of that. But, we know too, from an international perspective, US brands really do well overseas. So, that's another thing to bring up too, is like, you don't have to, if you're starting out as a new entrepreneur, you could relocate to another country. I know a lot of the millennials want to, explore and travel and live elsewhere. And you can bring an American concept into the country that you're going to move to. So there's so much opportunity with franchising. I think, if we break it down, I think the first thing that is really good for first-time buyers and first-time entrepreneurs is the proven system, right? Here's a business that has been built up for years. I mean, Transworld operated for how many years before you guys franchised?
Yeah, 30 almost. So.
Right. So these businesses have proven systems, proven business models that the owners know work. So instead of going through that startup phase and figuring out what's going to work, how am I going to make this thing profitable? How am I going to scale it? That proven system is already there. And I think that's probably one of the biggest selling points of going into a franchise and I think there's statistics around this too, is there's less likelihood that you're not going to succeed with the business model.
Yeah, franchising is a much safer model. I think even the banks know that. The SBA knows that. The E2 visa people, the government knows that when they're approving people, they like people buying franchises. So we see that a lot. We see, there are good and bad franchises out there, of course, just like any other business. And, for the most part, it's a lot like a lot of businesses. If you put enough effort into it, you should be successful, because most franchises start because they had a successful business and they decided, hey, let's expand through franchising. So usually, and especially UFG brands, they like to see those brands have at least one other unit. So then they have 2 units and they operate that successfully, and then they're going to expand. And literally that's what happened with Transworld. I mean, we had several units. We proved that we could run it remotely, not quite remotely, but with local management. And there was enough margins in there for it to be a franchise. And we had enough things that we were providing to a franchisee to make it worth a franchisee's worthwhile. And so you've seen that, right? So we've seen that in other franchises too. And I think one of the challenges out there in the world, when people think of franchising, they think they need to jump into a McDonald's. They think they could jump into a Chick-fil-A or an Orange Theory or a Dunkin' Donuts. I hate to break it to people, but those franchises are gone to the first-time buyer.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that you're going to be jumping to one of those hugely established brands right away.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think we could buy into if we wanted to, quite honestly.
No.
They sell internally, right? If a McDonald's resale happens, it gets bought up by existing franchise owners. And also, like, in a way, and we could talk a little bit about this too, is like there's new brands, there's emerging brands, and there's the established brands, right? So new brands have just franchised. Emerging, usually they're somewhere between like 20 and 100 units. And then the established ones are 100 units or more. And I think when I was becoming a franchisee, it was interesting to see how the franchisor models have evolved as well too, right? If you come into a new or emerging brand, you do have the opportunity to get involved more of a close-knit community. You can see the brand and sometimes even contribute through things like ad funds to the brand development. Whereas in like that established model, the McDonald's, the Dunkin' Donuts, that's gone, right? There's none of that real contribution. Yes, they listen to their franchisees, but they're so established that not only is it hard to buy in, it's also, if you want to contribute in any way, it's going to be significantly harder as a new owner.
Yeah, I love, like, one of the ways to look at that is like Transworld, and you're still dealing with one of the founders, right? I'm here and Bill's here, and then we're the first people that franchised it. So you're still dealing with it. And as we're growing, like you and I have become incredible partners, and you've been a partner in our growth and been a part of really redesigning the franchise as well as we step into things. We were just talking about ChatGPT before we launched, and all the things that's going to do for our industry. So it is good to be in. I think it's great for people to be in emerging brands, something that perhaps has more than one locations. You don't want to be the first franchisee if you're brand new, but that's an opportunity, right? You're going to be one of the first 20 or one of the first 100 franchises. It's going to be a great opportunity. They're getting the bugs out. They've already gotten the bugs out, and they're starting to expand. So.
And with that expansion too, you also, as a franchisee, you have opportunity for expansion, right? So as a new entrepreneur, new buyer, you probably want to start off with one unit. They're called territories in franchising, but one territory, one unit, one location, right? But with the emerging brands, if you get that process and system down and you become a really good franchisee, a great operator, you have the opportunity to grow as well. My husband Al and I, we started with one territory in Denver, Colorado, and I don't know how many we have it, but we, have the entire state of Colorado. We're in Texas, we're in Nevada. So, but there is that opportunity. And I think one of the myths I hear when people are shy about franchising is they're like, well, I want to build a big business, right? I don't want to just be a franchisee. And I think the myth is like, you can build a very big business as a franchisee. I know there was a deal, I think it was a Massage Envy deal, and one of the franchisees out in the Rocky Mountains sold for close to 9 figures. So like you can build a very, very big business as a franchisee.
It's funny. I've done some valuation work for Massage Envy and Massage Heights, which was, you think about a Massage Envy already built out, very hard to get into. A secondary one comes along, Massage Heights, and all of a sudden that is worth a lot of money too. I went to sell some of them and I couldn't believe the valuations they were getting for these places. So, and I met some multiple unit operators that had a very nice business going with these Massage Heights. And so you can absolutely do that too. But, back to the first time buyer, you're probably good going in, spending, there's plenty of franchises that are under $100,000. You'll probably need a little bit more than that to get started and to cash flow yourself, depending on what business you buy. There could be SBA financing available. And in fact, I just heard through the grapevine that part of the new SOP may be unwinding the franchise approval system that the SBA has. So what that means is they're unwinding it because they're not going to look at that anymore. They're just going to look at the business opportunity, and they won't have that red tape. So there might be more franchises available to be able to get SBA financing, which would be great.
Yeah, which I was going to bring up too, but it is actually, unwound or not, sometimes it's easier to get financing for a startup franchise. Actually, a lot of times it's easier to get funding for a startup franchise than a startup business, right? Yeah. So there's a lot more options available, and some franchisees even have lending partners and things like that built into their systems. So, but yeah, it's a great opportunity if you're a first-time entrepreneur, first-time buyer. There's a lot of great options with franchises. We're going to actually feature a couple really great up-and-coming and emerging franchise brands on the show today, right, Andy?
We are. I got to meet personally Kathy Livingston from, and I almost got it wrong because she's almost from Livingston, New Jersey. She's from New Jersey, which is both Jessica and I are from New Jersey. So we immediately, I love her, right? And she started a business. I have the brochure in my hand, but if you're listening to this, it's called Oliver's Nannies. And think a temporary help agency for nannies. And I said, isn't there already something like that out there? And she's like, no, there really isn't. You know, usually when you go out and get nannies or babysitters, you're kind of going through your Rolodex looking for the local college kid or, you know, the local, your friends, who are your friends using. And so what she did, she is from the elder care business, from the temporary help business. So she had a franchise in the elder care business, and she has now started Oliver's Nannies with a partner, and they've been extremely successful. And I always said, is it hard to get work? And she's like, no, we pay our people. So she has a great system down. They're expanding very, very quickly, and it's a nice franchise. It is a full-time job. It's not something you work from your house. They want you to have an office where you actually interview these people, but she goes through it in depth. And I really think it's a great opportunity. And, you know, just thinking about childcare, you know this, it's hard to get childcare, right?
It's hard. And I mean, like, look, hopefully one of the first units she sells is in Dallas, Fort Worth. But like, it's hard. There's a lot of opportunity there because it's hard on the nannies too, right? When we've spoken to the nannies that we've hired or part-time help, it's hard for them to find good families to work for and kind of match the schedules together. Because with the working environment today, it's not like everybody just works Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 anymore. There's all kinds of schedules. So I love the concept. I think she's going to do really well with it too. And then I interview someone close to our team, Cory Hibbard, who was recently the VP of operations for Cantwell, but he's moved over to becoming the president of Graze Craze, which is a relatively newer emerging brand under the United Franchise Group family, but playing off that trend of all the meat and cheese boards, the charcuterie boards and catering. That's what Graze Craze does. So they do some catering and some also like in-house type creation of these boards and these, I mean, they're almost pieces, like works of art, almost how beautiful they are. And this brand has been growing so fast. I mean, Cory's very, very busy right now, just adding new franchisees constantly. So
well, Cory's doing a great job. He's doing such a great job that I haven't seen that man in months.
This is going to be the first time on Zoom that I'll probably see him at least in 2023. So
if, you know, a lot of what goes into working with a great franchise is the ownership. And that's kind of why we picked these two franchises. Number one, you know, of course, we know the ownership at United Franchise Group, but we know that Cory is going to do everything in his power to make sure that his franchisees are successful. And I say his because he's president of the brand. Yeah. But, you know, UFG family and Star Point brands, I should start calling them Star Point brands, is going to do everything in their power to make their franchisees successful. And, you know, when you meet someone like Kathy, you just realize, you know, she's going to do everything in her power to make people successful. And that's what you look for, right? You look for the people behind the franchise. And I've met the founders of Orange Theory, and they were so passionate about that. You just knew that they were going to make a go of it. And so that's what you got to look for.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the support, the people, but it's also the cultural fit, right? Like I tell a story to a lot of new Transworld franchisees, and they say, like, when did you make the decision that Transworld was the right fit for you? And I was like, it was simple. It was when I met Andy, right? I knew there was a cultural alignment of how we saw the industry, what we wanted to do in our business. And I think that's truly when you find the right fit with a franchise, is that you feel like you're going to be supported, that they're going to want to help you grow, and that you feel a cultural alignment towards the organization that you're joining, because you are joining a community, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really takes teamwork. I will always tell people that when they join a franchise, you got to be part of the solution. It's not a part of the problem. I mean, getting it to be a part of the you're joining a family. I mean, literally you're joining a family. And if you all work together, that's the whole point of a franchise. You get to, have economies of scale. You get to have shared technology. You get to have shared branding and platform and ad funds and all that kind of stuff. All the stuff that we're going to talk about with our guests.
Yeah. And we would be remiss before we jump to our guests to not mention that if this is something you're interested in, but you feel like you need some guidance, our Transworld agents are able to help guide you through this process. So we have partnerships with hundreds of franchise brands, and you can reach out to any one of our Transworld agents, or if you want to reach out to us and we can connect you with somebody, they would be happy to help guide you through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. These two brands are definitely available at Transworld, as well as hundreds. I mean, literally hundreds. So,
yeah. Well, let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm, with over 500 brokers in nearly 200 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/the deal board or call 888-719-9098.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We have a very special guest, Kathy Livingston from Oliver's Nannies. I got the pleasure of meeting Kathy at a regional meeting in New York City with Eric Strauss, who Kathy knows well. And she has a franchise that she's been working with that she founded 5 years ago. And it's such a great story that we had to have her on. And we're talking about franchises today. So welcome, Kathy, and tell us your story.
Well, thank you first, Andy, for having me on today. It was lovely being at that meeting and meeting all the great Transworld brokers in the area. So Oliver's Nannies, we're really excited to be franchising around the country. Essentially, it's really super easy to get care for a lot of things, but unfortunately not your kids, it seems to be the case. So my husband and I had our first son, and we started looking for care and realized, wow, this is really tough finding somebody to be there in the house. So much harder than it should be. So we founded Oliver's Nannies. It gets you a nanny in your home that you get to select, and they are on the books, and Oliver's Nannies manages the care for you. So finding solutions for families, we crossed our fingers and hoped it would work because it was something we needed. And it turns out something a lot of parents needed. So in the area in Jersey, it exploded. And we thought, you know what, might as well bring it to the rest of the country. So that's what we're working on now. Have a lot of great opportunities for folks around the country to purchase an Oliver's Nannies and get started in their local area.
So tell us about the opportunity. What does a buyer look like who's going to run an Oliver's Nannies, and what's their day to day?
Sure. So, the great thing about Oliver's Nannies is it is really simple to get started, right? You're not talking about huge costs and huge barriers. We're the first really in the industry to come out with this opportunity. So I think you need a people person, right? You're people dealing with people, placing people with kids. I think you just need to be somebody that likes to go out there and talk, really wants to solve families' problems. and that embraces the part of management and team building that you need with your nannies. I think if you have that and a little creativity, look, it's a new opportunity. So as an early on franchisee, you're also having the impact on development of system, right? So you get to bring all of the creativity and the entrepreneurial spirit. So a go-getter, high energy, likes people. I think that's what we're looking forward to onboard into the system.
Yeah, and there's no lack of need out there for people who need care, right?
No. So in starting to get the franchising going, we looked up some statistics from around the country. And right now, 51% of America is in a childcare desert. So what that means, Andy, is that there's 3 children to every daycare slot under the age of 5. So parents really are getting put on ridiculous wait lists. They can't find care. And what do you do if you got to work? You got to find a solution. So Oliver's Nannies is bringing forward a new solution to parents that don't even have another option. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It literally is solving a problem that is unsolvable other ways right now.
Yeah, I mean, the old-fashioned way of doing it was like scouting other families for kids or scouting relatives or having relatives take your kids in when you needed to. And I would, again, that is, I think one of the nice things about Oliver's Nannies is putting a process to this. I think for so many people, they just hire anybody that they can and hope that they're following a process. Or, I mean, is there training involved? Like, when somebody becomes a nanny for Oliver's Nannies, what is that?
Sure. So I laugh too, Andy, because it's like, I just got to find a breathing human. I love my kids. They're the greatest thing on earth. I would do anything for them. Can I find a breathing human to watch them? Like, that was our standard all the time, right? Like, does anybody have a 16-year-old kid they can throw over here? And that's totally fine half the time, right? And the other half of the time, you can't find anybody. Or you have my parents that are like, no, we'll do anything, but don't ask us to babysit, right? So taking the peace of mind and giving it to parents that no matter what, right? If your parents don't want to watch the kids, you don't have a neighbor with a teenager, we got it. So everybody's background checked. We actually, in today's day and age, I don't know if you've ever heard of COVID and all the health scares we've had, right? We do physicals, we do vaccinations. So you're getting somebody that's fully vetted, both from a criminal perspective, we do the references, and there's physical requirements to make sure we're putting the absolute safest person in there. And the beauty of it is we have families that use us on a weekly basis on a standard schedule. We're also offering a service that's backup care as you need it, date nights, if you will, so you can always get somebody. So a franchisee coming into the system has a lot of flexibility and creativity on what they want to grow their business and have it look like for them, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, it sounds like a great, I mean, it's a full-time job, obviously, if you buy an Oliver's Nannies, right? But do you run it from home?
So we run it from an office. You have a lot of people. It is a full-time job, which we think is a great thing, right? Like, you're buying a business that has the ability to be busy and be busy fast. So that's great. And you have a lot of people coming and going, a lot of nannies coming to the office. So we like to keep it in an office. You're looking at like an executive suites type situation, nothing with a super high commitment, but you can kind of ease into the game with getting one office and grow from there.
Yeah, it's a professional organization, which sounds great. And one of the things I loved your answer for this, because I think one of the brokers in the meeting brought up, well, isn't it so hard to hire people these days? And I thought you had a great answer to that.
Listen, everybody likes to have an excuse about this, right? Like, hiring, you can do it. You can find people. You have, you got to put the money in, you got to do the hard work, and then you find them. And then, by the way, you take care of them and you make sure that you take care of them better than anybody else can take care of them. I think the business is there. Just go out and get it. And I also think anybody who puts the work into finding good people and taking care of them, you win the game, right? Because you have the best people and the best workers. And that's really what it takes to kind of build your business there.
Right. And the nannies are, I would imagine, all ages. I mean, obviously they have to be legal to work. They have to be 15 years old at least, right?
Yeah. So Andy, first thing is we like to follow the law.
Right.
It's crazy, right? So we do. It's funny. We have babysitters, junior nannies, and senior nannies. So I think, so I think the age range of our current team in New Jersey is from 18, I think all the way up to, we had somebody in their 70s at one point,
Hmm.
and their family loved them. It really depends on what the family's looking for. You have some families that the requests are kind of amazing and across the board, right? So some families kind of want somebody who's like a grandmother. Other families want a college kid who's going to play with their son, or whatever the case might be. So we're really able to kind of go with whatever the family is looking for in that regard. But we can hire young, we can hire 18, and people love it. But we do follow the law, Andy. That's the number one.
No, that's great. I mean, so this is, again, a professional business. You're buying a business and you're going to help them build their business like you did.
Absolutely. So the growth has been phenomenal in the local office. Opening up in 2018, I have to say, COVID hitting a national pandemic, we thought, my goodness, what's going to happen? We grew. That's what we did. I mean, the reality is we have a solution to a problem that not a lot of people can offer. It's in a business that's a low cost to open, which is fantastic. We have open territories right now around the country. There's a lot of upside for somebody who's ready to go out on their own right now. And not a lot to hold you back. If you're a people person and you want to go out and schmooze and you want to roll up your sleeves and get a business that has a lot of upside, this is a good opportunity for you. I think for people too, I can't get over how much I love that parents are beyond full of gratitude when you meet them, because it's such a stressful thing to have childcare. And when we talk to our parents, I had the pleasure, we did a fall fest in November, and I got to meet a lot of the parents we serve. And some of them got quite emotional, saying, I didn't know how I was going to go back to work after maternity leave, or my office opened back up. And the thought of going back after I've been caring for my kid for a little while, I didn't know how it was going to go. And it was really nice that we were able to be their solution and that they were so happy about it. So it's a very rewarding business financially and from a perspective of you're helping families in a real way.
It sounds like a great business. And like you said, you have territories available where you're registered. And are you registered in 50 states yet?
So we're available in most states. We're not registered. We just achieved registration in Connecticut, Maryland, Florida, working on Virginia, New York as well. We're registered in. So it's a day-by-day process where we're getting registered in all the states. We absolutely have a lot of good territories available. We are I know I was asked this in the meeting, and I think it's super important. We did pull the demographics of the local office that was so successful, and we are looking to match those demographics for our franchisees coming in. We're really committed to making sure that they have the same recipe of demographics that we think fed into that success. Listen, we don't want to sell to somebody unless we know they're going to do a great job, unless they're going to have a good, strong business. So we're going to be looking at household income, number of children, making sure that the demographics are there and the need is there for them to staff.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than unhappy franchisees.
No, we don't like unhappy franchisees. That's not something.
And I know you've been involved with franchising before, so you know what you're doing.
Sure. So my background, actually 20 years, has been either working for franchisors or owning a franchise myself, right? And I think strongly and passionately, and my counterpart, the co-founder of Oliver's Nannies Franchising, has also been a franchisee for several years, is we want happy franchisees. We look at this as a successful franchise as not one that has locations all over the country, but one that has healthy locations all over the country. We want our franchisees, meeting their needs. And that might be financial, that might be meeting families, whatever it is. We'd like them to be meeting both personally. But that's our goal. We want to grow the system in a way. It doesn't matter if it's slow, if it's fast, it matters that it's healthy. It matters that our franchisees are happy, that their needs of entrepreneurship are being met, because that's what gives us a long, healthy end game.
It sounds like an amazing opportunity. You have someone in Kathy that's been a franchisee. Nothing better than a franchisor who knows the talk, knows both sides. And not only that, but you started by co-founding a very successful office yourselves. So
Absolutely.
You have the experience being on the ground, understanding what it takes to hire, what it takes to implement the system. And what I liked about this is, people always ask me, Andy, what's a great franchise to get involved in? and they always kind of spit out like the ones that are like, they're gone, like you're not getting a Dunkin' Donuts these days.
No more
or
Dunkin'
McDonald's.
territories. Yeah.
The Troy Aikman's in that one, but
Oh, my
Shaquille
goodness.
O'Neal is in, Papa John's. You're not getting one of those these days, but they always want something that they could get in on the ground floor. And I'm like, this is it. Like when there's something good comes along, you could be part of something great. I mean, you could be part of a ground floor, and the franchisors are always so focused on making their first, 20 franchisees super successful. And that's what
you have to. Yeah, that is, I would tell you, right. We have a lot of coffee in this country, and we have a lot of pizza in this country. It's time we have a lot of childcare in this country. We're the first ones offering a model that's this unique to be able to do it. Get in at the ground, just like you said. As for being a franchisee and a franchisor, I laugh sometimes because I'll have conversations with myself and I'll be like, well, what would franchisee Kathy say? Well, what would franchisor Kathy say? The good news is I do have those conversations. So we get to both sides and land in a really successful place, right? It balances. So we know it's going to be great and we know it's going to be big. We really look forward to building it with our franchisees. And I think that's the exciting part. So eventually, perhaps there will be as many many Oliver's Nannies as there are Dunkin' Donuts, Papa John's, McDonald's.
Yeah,
we won't have any childcare deserts left then.
Yes. And obviously there's a need out there. And that's what franchising does, is it helps individuals get into business. You could be a first-time business owner. This is this is what this is why you buy a franchise, because you have the recipe that's working. And unlike anybody else's. So, Kathy, what's the best way to get in touch with you if people want to learn more, other than calling Transworld? So,
call Transworld. You can absolutely call Transworld, and Transworld should absolutely only give us as an option. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, they should.
They should, only us. So if you want my contact, my email is kathy.livingston@oliversnannies.com. You can always call us at 1-833-7-OLIVER, or you can visit the website at oliversnanniesfranchising.com. We're happy to talk to anybody about their interest.
It sounds like an amazing opportunity. Get in while it's good, folks. And thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate you telling me your story.
All right. Thanks, Andy. And thank you to everybody at Transworld too.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week. Sold.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Deal Board. And this week for our deal of the week, I have one of my business partners in our Transworld Colorado office, John Woodhull. John, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jessica. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so congratulations. You just had a business sale, a business closing. Tell us a little bit about this business that you just sold.
Yeah, it's a design and build construction company. They do develop homes up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Nice.
And they've been around for, I think, like 17 years it was.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So design build, lots of residential stuff up there, especially in the mountains too, can be a bit tough to find the right buyer for that business. Who ultimately bought the business and why was it such a good fit for them?
Yeah, so this one was a very emotional deal. So the buyer that we decided to settle on was actually the CFO of the business, who had come on board within probably the last 18 months of the business. So didn't have a lot of history with the business. Young person. He was in his late 20s, but he had some private equity background in doing construction development. Really a sad story though. The owner of the business passed away, and so his wife was left with the business. And she did have some experience in the business prior to them having kids. They have 3 little kids, so she was definitely not in a great spot in terms of wanting to sell the business and run the business. And so looking to sell the business was kind of her what she needed to do. And we obviously wanted to get her the most value for the business. Mm-hmm. And given the circumstances with what happened, it really kind of boiled down to, if we're going to get the most value we can for this business, we probably need to get it to somebody who's working within the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's so sad and unfortunate. We don't deal in this a lot, but we have a handful of cases every year like this one. And really, you're right. It's in these situations, it is vetting external buyers, but it's vetting internal at the same time and just seeing who can get the most value and also ensure I would say the quickest handoff, right? So she can really focus on her family and their well-being. So tell us a little bit, if you can, about the deal structure. Like, how did it come together?
Yeah, so this, like I said, the buyer, and I just say, I want to do a shout out to my colleague, Kate Bierman, who worked with me on this. I'd say he was more the lead on this, and I supported him. But the buyer was, as I said, he was a young guy, and he didn't have any money. He's very intelligent. Like I said, he worked in private equity, has a finance background. Operationally, he's pretty good because he's been running the business for like the last year while the husband was sick. And so when, so anyway, he was sort of the guy we decided to go with, but with him not having any money and not being able to put down any money, we were faced with, okay, well, how are we going to one, get ourselves paid and get her paid and make this a positive outcome for everybody involved. And this is one of these ones where you really have to, it's a feel thing. So one of the taglines for Transworld is doing good deals for good people. I have to say, like, the guy who's the buyer, he is just a genuine, good, top shelf person. He understood the circumstances that he came in to work with that business, and it's unfortunate what happened, but he totally stepped up, and we structured the deal in a way that was going to be palatable to him, right? He's only worked there for 18 months, so he wasn't going to take on a bunch of liability, and that was going to put him at risk. And so we ended up he did take on the liability, I have to say, actually, because he did do a stock sale. But in terms of being on a personal guarantee to pay out the entire amount of the value of the business, which was a $1.8 million deal. The business is doing about $7 million, I think, around 7-8 million in revenue. For him to sign on to really stepping into that role of taking the reins of the business and running with it, not having the history with the business, and willing to do a stock sale, we had to give up some things. And one of the things was, we structured it as a full promissory note over 5 years. She's going to get paid out like $31,500, for the next 5 years. Our fee, was split between the buyer and seller. The buyer is actually going to pay half the fee on the back end. So, part of that fee got tagged on to the $1.8 million purchase price. And it was an interesting deal from that standpoint, because you're not getting any money at close, and there's no money exchanging hands between the buyer and the seller. And like I said, it's a stock sale, and there's no the liability is totally on the buyer. It's just, we're just lucky to have had it come together. It really came down to the two people who were involved.
Yeah. And with those internal sales, like a couple key learnings for our listeners with the internal sales, especially this quick sale where there's an illness or unfortunately a death in this situation, like sometimes the right buyer doesn't always have the capital, right? So being really creative in the deal structure to ensure the employees have still a place to show up to work every day, the legacy of the company is maintained. And again, the seller can focus on her family right now. Creativity is key. So, John, it sounds like it was a good result in a very unfortunate situation, but really good creative deal making on both your and Cade's side. If one of our listeners is wanting to work with you, either to buy a business or sell a business in Colorado, how can they reach you?
My cell number is 720-846-0948. And my email is jwoodhull, WOODHULL @tworld.com.
Awesome. And we'll drop those contact details into the show notes as well. John, thanks for being on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thanks, Jessica. Have a great day.
Welcome back, everybody. And today, like we talked about in the intro, we're featuring great businesses, specifically great franchises for first-time entrepreneurs. And I'm really excited to have one of my longtime colleagues with me, Cory Hibbard. He worked with us on the Transworld side for years, and now he is president of a very fast-growing franchise brand called Graze Craze. Cory, welcome to the Deal Board.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate the time.
So before we get started, just give the listeners a bit of a background about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'll try to abbreviate it as much as I can. You've heard this story a million times probably, but have been with United Franchise Group here since late 2014. Spent the majority of my tenure building and growing the Transworld Business Advisors brand in the last 5.5 years there as the Vice President of Operations. And end of last year was tapped to venture into another great budding emerging franchise that we've got here under the UFG umbrella by the name of Graze Craze, which is the first Graze Craze is the first charcuterie franchise in the space. So really rare. In 2021, we looked at this business and it was this emerging concept out of Oklahoma City. And we're looking to expand our food division. And as we did so, we kind of found something with a lower investment model, a lower labor model, and lower overhead model. And the most unique thing was in 2021 to find a food business that had virtually no competition. A lot of fragmented DIYers in the space and people doing things out of their home, but we really didn't have any consolidated competition in this vertical, and our eyes were kind of open to a huge opportunity, and in came Graze Craze. So here we are now in 2023.
And I mean, right at the peak of like the popularity you bring into like the Instagram and the influencers, right? But right at the popularity of boards, right? And charcuterie boards and all this kind of stuff is when you guys found this business and entered the space. So great timing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Graze Craze. You touched on the background and the history, but bring us up to speed to today. And what does the business model look like for Graze Craze?
Yeah, look, I mean, most importantly, while there are competitors, so to speak, maybe in the space that are doing business to consumer type model where you're doing one-off boards here or there for special events, there's really no reliable source for charcuterie boards coast to coast. And, you know, as we start to expand globally around the globe, that provides a consistent product that people can trust and rely on, but also gives the versatility of having dozens of different options on one board, right? So where we've actually kind of gravitated towards and seen a ton of great reception is in the corporate and the catering space, which is really where the model of the business has shifted to. And we've seen, like I said, just wonderful reception. We've been overwhelmed with how well received the product's been. And as we build and grow this, we kind of look at what maybe a company like Edible Arrangements did, where they got into a space, they brought a new concept in, but they made it as easy as possible to cater to the masses. And our product just naturally does it, right? It's really hard, we say all the time, to find somebody that doesn't like fruits, vegetables, meats, cheeses, sweets. Like there's got to be something on the board that everybody in the room will eat. So as we continue to build the momentum, building lots of partnerships with large corporations around the country, just to develop kind of that steady baseline gives us the freedom and the flexibility to have fun with the business to consumer side as well. So it's not that we're necessarily pigeonholed into just B2B type operations and sales, but it gives us the flexibility to have some more fun with the other side of it too, understanding there's just that consistent need from the business to business side.
Yeah, it makes the business more sustainable. It makes the growth potential, I'm sure, a lot bigger than if you're just doing the B2C market. Yeah. So I do want you to touch on a little bit too, Cory. Andy and I talked about this in the intro, but you know, the support of a good franchisor is really critical when you're making a decision into what brand to enter. And United Franchise Group and Starpoint Brands, which is what Graze Craze falls underneath, is really built a significant support system. So talk a little bit about, you know, what a potential franchisee could expect in that relationship.
It's a good question. And I think this is really important in any franchise, right? Not just whether it's ours or something in our family of brands, or really any franchise when you're looking at it as a prospective franchisee and future entrepreneur, is to find people that aren't afraid to hire even ahead of the curve a little bit on the support side. If you truly have a sustainable model and you have a great business, you know you'll get there, right? So nothing's more important than the franchisee's success, especially in our circumstance, maybe as an early first 2-3 years as a franchise, to double down and invest in the support to make sure franchisees have somebody that's always got their back. They have somebody that's always going to pick up the phone when they call. They have somebody that's going to talk to them on a Sunday night if they need something, help them through anything from employment and staffing to operational to, I mean, we've had calls where we've gotten orders for 1,000-person graduation events, and it's way more than, you know, one kitchen can handle, right? So looking at things along those lines when you're looking at any franchise across the board, it is really important. And then I'd say as you look at ours, it's really diving into the right people in the right seat. So making sure that we've got the right support team members and we're not just rushing into putting bodies in seats and throwing bodies at problems, but making sure we have people with vast food experience and background, marketing experiences and background, and then operational excellence as well. You know, people that really know how to follow through and make sure that we're giving the best results and the best products to people when they're showing up and ordering from us.
Yeah. It's a really great point in having that support. I mean, I can speak from personal experience. I know with working with Cory for, 5-6 years, that I know he will personally pick up the phone and help his franchisees, and his entire team will too. So it's super important. I agree. So this episode's about first-time entrepreneurs, first-time buyers, why franchising is a good option for them. And what is your perspective on that? Why do you think a franchise, the right franchise, we should say, would be a good option for a first-time entrepreneur?
I think you hit on something that's really important at the tail end of that, which is the right franchise, right? I mean, not every franchise works for every person, and franchise is a personality fit. Franchise is a financial fit. There's a lot of criteria that goes into making the perfect fit for the perfect person. But I would say there's a lot of obvious things with franchising, the systems, the model. But there's a lot of things that I would say go into franchising that you don't see on the surface as well. The blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get there, the road. We used to tell people all the time, even at Transworld, right? I mean, we spent many years at Transworld as we were building and growing, talking to people that were going, was this something I could do by myself? Is this a business I could do on my own? And the answer essentially with any franchise is, well, yeah, you could if you've got enough time. But how much time do you have to allocate to it is really kind of the formula that you need to look at. And the better a franchise, the shorter that road is to success. So looking at the right fit for you, is it something I'm going to want to go out and market hard? Is it something I'm going to eat, sleep, and drink? Is it something that, I'm going to really dive into all in? Or is this something I'm just looking for a return out of? Because there are businesses and franchise concepts, I think, that do fit that approach, but many aren't. So understanding what it's going to take in order to be that successful franchisee, and not just looking at numbers or falling in love with, representations or item 19s, which is a financial representation in the FDDs, but really falling in love with the business concept and knowing you'll believe in it thick and thin. And I think the right fit, I mean, you've been a shining example, right, in what you've done with Transworld, and you and Al as you built and grew this, amazing office. But it was something, I would argue, in the early days, you weren't looking at what the business was bringing back to you. You were looking at how you scaled it and you invested in it and you became the best in it. And that fit is what really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you still have to be passionate about the business and the opportunity, right? And sometimes I do think, like, look, when we first were searching for our next venture after we sold our wine businesses, like, one, we were not looking into franchising, and two, business brokerage was not on our radar, right? So sometimes you will surprise yourself when you're in the search to buy a business that, like, yeah, just maybe opening up the opportunity to search for franchises. And I always tell buyers too, like, open up your box a little bit and don't be so narrow-minded in an industry. Try to think about, like, what is it about that industry that attracts you so much to it and makes you passionate about? And there might be other industries or other verticals that can deliver that same type of passion, but with a huge opportunity for growth, kind of, like Graze Craze. So that being said, like, who's an ideal franchisee for Graze Craze? Like, what are some of the most successful franchisees that you've seen so far?
They're really good marketers and self-promoters. In the end of the day, we've worked really hard and we've put the framework in place. We know the product, we know the consumer demands, we've got the technology. Well, it's never perfect, in a really good spot. But what we need is foot soldiers. We need people that are going to be prophets of Graze Craze, right? And the right franchisees and our best franchisees have been the ones that will put their head down, they'll plow through and get through this. We say all the time, depending on what the sale is, right? Sales cycle could be 12 no's before you get a yes. We need the ones that are going to get to 13, that aren't going to give up after 1 or 2 or 3, especially in our life cycle right now. We've got a really good opportunity. We're in rapid growth mode. Our first 18 months, we sold over 150 franchises, and we're opening on average about 1 every week for the remainder of the year, 2023. So we'll get to the end of the year and be hovering around that 100 store mark, and we will start to get the benefit of some of that brand recognition and a little bit more, passive business. But right now, in these early years, as we build and grow what we believe can be a household name and synonymous with charcuterie, we really need the people that are going to come alongside us and make that push. So for us, doesn't take a ton of food experience. You don't have to be an expert in the kitchen. Our boards are not super complex, but we do need people that are going to really push and build this business like you would from the ground up with any other business. And the rest of it, I think we can work through together and really build something special.
Yeah, you just need growth marketers, right? So that's all it is. So it's interesting you brought up, we talked in the intro about new brands and emerging brands and then established. And I mean, you guys are just blowing through it real fast, right? You blew through new brand status really fast. You're blowing through emerging brands. We were just talking, you've got some really exciting opportunities on the international front. What's next for Graze Craze over the next 12 to 18 months?
12 to 18 months, I think we continue to solidify us in the short term as the go-to option in charcuterie. 12 leading into 18 months, I think we look at being the brand that becomes accessible everywhere to everyone. The product, like I had said earlier, is so well received that we're still, as we've grown really rapidly with, we're knocking on 40 stores open. I think we're at 37 this week, opened 2 on Monday. We're in 20 states, but there's still a lot of gaps, right? So as we continue to grow and by the end of the year, hopefully fill out a lot of the major markets and coverage, I think that's where we get to shift in becoming more synonymous with the product itself. I mean, I look 18 months from now, and at that point, I think we'll have enough coverage for people to look at a charcuterie board and wonder if it's from Graze Craze. We do it now with, we lean on edible arrangements a lot. So thanks to them for kind of paving the way in a kind of unique and niche catering business. But we look at what they did, and you could get a fruit basket that could be from 20 different sources in this day and age, right? And you just say, oh, it's a nice edible arrangement, and I think we can do the same thing if we execute. And then continuing to build national partnerships where our brand is just seen everywhere, all the time. And we're seeing it now. We've already started a partnership with one of the largest wine stores in the country, where now they do tastings twice a month, and we'll have our boards in front of everybody during the wine tastings. But, I see that as the tip of the iceberg. I think we can get to the point where, when people see charcuterie, they really do associate it with Graze Craze.
Edible arrangements of charcuterie. I love it.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, I know that, Cory, you will take this brand as high as it possibly can go, and there's no better team to support potential new franchisees and maybe their first business opportunity. So if someone's listening to the show and they want to learn more about Graze Craze, what's the best way they can get in touch?
Yeah, look, easiest way is you can go to grazecrazefranchise.com. It'll have tons of information. It'll probably fill in a lot of gaps on what a day in the life of the owner looks like, and what this might look like for you if it is the right fit. So you can always go to grazecrazefranchise.com. You'll see contact information there. You can fill out a quick form. Our team's very good. They're very diligent. They'll get in touch with you quickly, but there's phone numbers on there. If you need us and it's easier to pick up the phone, you can always call 561-646-6606. But, we look forward to talking you through it and see if it is the right fit in the end of the day. And if it's not, getting you in the right direction to something else that may be.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll drop all that information to our show notes as well. Cory, it's always great seeing you. Hopefully it doesn't have to be the deal board that brings us back together. I know you're very busy getting new franchises launched, but it was great to see you. And thank you so much for being on the show.
You as well. Thanks for having me on, Jess.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week.
Welcome back to the Deal Board, everybody. And today for our listing of the week, I'm really excited to have kind kind of a new franchisee on, but one of our newer offices, Transworld Business Advisors of Las Vegas South, has recently opened. Chris Cantwell as the managing director in that area. Chris, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the listing.
Thanks, Jessica. Glad to be here. And yeah, so I've been with Transworld 7 or 8 years now. I think 7.5 years. Something like that. It feels like it's only been a couple of weeks, but that's how much fun you have doing this job. But anyhow, so done well over 100 deals and had an opportunity to help us expand from Colorado and Dallas and Fort Worth into the Las Vegas market. So we officially got this office opened here this year, and we've got some new agents that'll be joining us, and we're really going to get this thing rolling. And that kind of leads me to today, one of my Las Vegas listings that I think is a lot of fun.
Let's hear about it.
Attention. Yeah, so this is an award-winning subscription e-commerce coffee roasting business. And anytime we get anything with coffee, it's a lot like the pet industry. You get a lot of inquiries, and while you may get a lot of tire kickers, you get some good buyers as well. So we've had some good activity on this, and this was actually a business that started in Colorado, but moved to Las Vegas and is just doing some phenomenal business. So their revenue is about $900,000. They'll probably do a little over $1 million this year in gross revenue. Cash flows at $259K. We've got it priced at $825, which is basically a 3 multiple. So we know we're going to get a lot of interest on this business. So we're starting on the higher end of the scale. But like all of these businesses, it's negotiable. So if you know anyone that's interested in the coffee roasting business, this is a business that could be relocated. It obviously has some heavy equipment that would have to be moved, but because they really don't have a retail presence and it really is online and subscription based, it could be operated from anywhere.
That sounds like a great deal. And I assume it's probably would qualify for SBA financing too, right? With those numbers?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
Nice.
I've had a couple of banks already take a look and say, yeah, bring us a buyer and we'll do some financing. It'll depend on the buyer, of course, and it'll depend on where the purchase price ends up. But the seller would even be willing to do some seller financing, which helps the deal. The banks always love when there's a little bit of seller financing. The buyers always love it because there's still some skin in the game from the seller. And if they run into some sort of a hurdle down the road and they give the seller a call, the seller's going to answer their phone. And that's what they care about the most.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're going to be really busy on this one. Coffee, subscription-based, recurring revenue, relocatable. I mean, all the boxes are checked. So if you are a buyer, I wouldn't hesitate getting in touch with Chris. Chris is also very humble. He was our deal maker of the year in Colorado for, 5-6 years running, closing the most deals in our Colorado offices, and still is a partner in those offices. Chris, congratulations on your new office in Las Vegas South. If someone wants to reach out to you either about this listing or buying or selling a business in Vegas, how can they reach you?
Yeah, they could call me directly. My cell phone here in Las Vegas is 702-493-0095, or they can go to any of the Transworld Business Advisor web pages and find me. I'm on our Colorado agent site. I'm on our Las Vegas site. So you can find me at tworld.com as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the deal board.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.